Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be my review for Sons of Anarchy, Season 7, Episode 12, Red Rose. And let's talk about this episode for a second. I was really looking forward to this episode. Definitely, I was very looking forward to this episode. Now, this is by far the craziest episode of the season, but it's not the best one, and I'm going to explain why. You guys are probably saying, what are you talking about? Oh my god, how can you not think this is the best episode of the season? In terms of death, body counts, yes, definitely this was the best episode of the season. Hell yes, this was. Definitely. This episode was amazing in that. However, this episode was painfully slow. Painfully slow. And the thing I loved about the last episode is that, yes, just like the last episode, yes, these are conversations we want to hear about, but this episode was like 2 hours long and it didn't need to be. It did not need to be as long as it was. It was way too long in my opinion. They put too much in it, and honestly, the second half of this episode really felt like the first half of the finale, and we're going to talk about why, but let's just get to it. I'm not really going to talk about a lot that happened in the first half. A lot of the first half really was just sort of just like plotting about what they're going to do with Gemma, basically, you know, what they're planning on doing there. Let's talk briefly about Gemma. We're going to talk about this, because Wendy packs Abel's lunch and asks Brooke if she's seen Gemma, and Brooke asks her if it's weird being there after the whole Tara thing, and Wendy tells her that Tara died there in the kitchen, and she OD'd there herself. So obviously that's a very, like, you know, weird spot for them to be in. So Brooke says that that must be hard, and Wendy says she feels more at home here now than she did back then. And Abel comes in and asks for Grandma and says, and she says she probably went to work early. She leaves to take him to school, and Wayne is at Gemma's place cleaning up dishes. He tosses down the key he has to the house and leaves. Gemma's asleep in her car at a truck stop. A guy wakes her up and says she's in a rig zone. She says sorry that it was empty when she pulled in. She cranks her car and pulls out. Gemma moves her car, puts on her sunglasses, slumps back into her seat trying to get back to sleep, and Jackson the guys talk to them, and basically then we cut to the intro. So I thought that was a good way to start it, but then we get tons of very, very slow scenes. You know, we get Jackson the guys talking to the Mayans about territory, and I like seeing Jax and Nero work together. I will say that. I like seeing them work together, but I'm not really feeling this Beresky plot. I gotta say, guys, I'm not feeling it. I feel like this plot, honestly, I've said this before, guys, this season should have been 10 episodes long. 10 episodes, not 13, and there's a reason why it should have been 10 episodes. Because about 3 of these episodes, including this one, have been very, very slow. And honestly, I feel like they could have just introduced this plot, like in episode 6. And if they would have done that, I would have been fine with that. And now we're in episode 12, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling this Beresky plot at all. It's nothing new. And I don't really care about it. I don't. I care about Gemma. I care about what's going on there. But I don't really care about Beresky. I don't care about him. So basically, I'm not even going to talk about it because I don't care about it. And then Shibbs tells Jax he's got to ride in the van because the APB. It tells, you know, because, of course, the rule is Jax can't be on the street because they put an APB on him. So Nero asks to talk to Jax, and he asks Nero if he's okay with the Baez lap move. And Nero says he thinks drugs are a mistake, but says it's fiascos to make. Nero asks if he's heard from Gemma, neither has he. And Nero tells him he's going tomorrow to Norco to work on making the house handicap accessible for his son. And Nero says he'll be back in a couple of days and tells Jack he did a good job selling things between black and brown. And Jack asks him to take Wendy and the boys with him to the farm tomorrow. And Nero tears up and says he always hoped Gemma would bring them down. And he says the kids will love because of all the animals. Now, of course, I thought Gemma was going to that farm, but that's not where she is. She's at Wayne's, basically. So Nero gives him a hug and heads out. And then we see Juice. And I'm going to say this. Scenes with Juice were very slow in this episode, and I was not a fan of where they took Juice's storyline at all. In fact, here's what I would have wanted happen to Juice. I personally would have just wanted Juice to somehow get out of the prison and go back to the Suns. That's what I wanted, because that's where it seemed like we were headed. It seemed like Juice was going to end up working with the Suns again, and that's not what happens. And I don't even really want to talk about it because it's dumb, okay? I'm not a fan of their plot very much at all. Their plot is really, and honestly, here's the thing. Their plot has basically contributed nothing because, once again, Juice ends up raped. How many times are we going to have this rape storyline? It's not interesting. It's not. Okay? Juice has been, like, raped, like, ever since he's been in prison. It's not interesting. It's boring. And I really want to talk about a show that does prison storylines very well. Justified. Justified's another show on FX, and it handled prison stuff very, very well than Sons of Anarchy did, because that actually had sort of like a plot of how they're going to break out of jail, and that actually had a structure to it. This hasn't really had any story to it, except that Juice keeps getting raped. That's the whole story we've gotten to this, and I'm not a fan of it at all, especially because we've seen how good of an actor Juice can be when he's given very good dramatic material like he was in episode 11, and it was definitely very disappointing to see Juice, Juice's character be reduced to this, because he's a very good actor, and it was very sad to see, I was very upset that this happened. I was like, really, they're taking it in this direction? I'm not happy about it. Really, I'm not. So, I wasn't happy about that at all. So then we get more of Jax talking about the whole Beresky thing, which I don't care about. I just don't. So, Gemma sitting in a truck stop, and Michael Chiklis randomly shows up. This guy Milo randomly shows up, and I don't even want to talk about it. It's not important. It was just as boring as Leah Michelle's scene was. Like, Leah Michelle didn't even need to be in this show. I don't understand why they keep putting pointless guest stars in episodes just for them to have conversations with Gemma. Like, why do we need to have so many conversations? I'm pretty sure that this would happen, and I know this is true because they've talked about it. Anything Katie Seagal says she wants to happen to Gemma's character, Kurt Sutter will put in there. So I'm pretty sure this would happen. Katie Seagal went up to Kurt Sutter. Hey, I have an idea. Let's get another random guest star. I love working with Leah Michelle. Let's get someone else who will just randomly come in. And, of course, Kurt Sutter will be okay with it. And that's why they put him in. Because he did not need to be in there. Michael Chiklis didn't do anything. He contributed nothing. And, honestly, at this point, the episode was putting me asleep. I'm not going to lie here, guys. I was completely bored. I didn't care at all about this episode. I really didn't. I thought this episode was very, very boring. It really was. Now, it's not worst episode of the season because of what happens later. But 99% of this episode is very, very boring. Definitely. Definitely very boring. And I'm not really a fan of that very much. So, let's talk about a scene that I definitely really did like. I thought this was a very good scene in my opinion. Jax and the guys come to meet the other leaders at Redwoody, and Rat says that they're already at the table. And, oh, I gotta talk about this. This is very important. Jax and Wayne have a conversation, and Jax tells him straight out that, Gemma killed Tara. And I thought that was surprising, because, think about this. Wayne has been so set on finding out who killed Tara. He's been so set on that. And finally, he gets information. And the way Jack's, so subtly revealed to him, I'm like, that's, way too subtle. Because, first of all, I'm not a fan of really how he found out about it. Especially because what ends up happening to Wayne's character. I thought it, it was kind of weird just the way he found out about it. Also, why does Jax really care? Because here's the thing, if Jax wants to do something about Gemma, why would he just straight out tell Wayne? It doesn't make any sense. It really just, there are certain things that just don't add up into this episode, and it was very all over the place because of that, and it didn't really work in my opinion, definitely, and I wanted it to, but it didn't. So, Jax and the guys come to meet the other leaders at Redwoody, and Rat says they're already at the table. And Jax goes in and apologizes for being late. Jax says he knows they've talked, but says he has something to say before they deliver their decision. He tells him he was wrong, that he found out and he tells him straight out, and I was happy he told him this. I really like this scene. Even though I'm not into this, Beresky, however you pronounce it, I thought this was a very good scene, because he tells him straight out that he lied to them. He tells them that he lied to them. It was not jury, it was Beresky that rat about the guns. He says it didn't make sense because Beresky had so much to lose, and Gaines asks how jury could confess, and Jack says he lied about that too, and he says he was so bent on revenge for his wife that jury was just one more thing that got in his way. And I like that Jax is realizing all the bad mistakes he made, because he was so hell-bent on doing this, and now he's, not as hell-bent on revenge, because he knows it was his mother. So, and he knows it was all a misunderstanding too. So Gang says Mayhem has to land, and Jack says he knows. Hench asks if his charter knows. Packard says Sam Crow needs to know if the vote goes the wrong way. He says a president killing a president sends a bad message, and Jack says he'll make sure they vote to protect the organization, but says he needs something in return. And he says there's a bylaw that's been around since his old man held the gavel that he wants thrown out. And this was a very good scene, because this really felt like, we're getting down to the finale. So Tig says the best case is self-defense, and they pay damages, and Rat asks what the worst case is, and Chip tells him to stop asking questions. Packer says, yeah, that they'll make that vote unanimous and honor his request. Jack thanks him. He takes the gavel and tells him it's been a privilege to be the president. He says he's sorry he couldn't live up to it. He lays the gavel aside. The meeting adjourns, and Packer shakes Jax's hand, then follows the others out. So Jax is no longer the president, which I thought was interesting. So basically he tells them, look, I'm done. And I like that he straight out told them that, because this really feels like we're getting somewhere finally with this. I definitely like that we're getting somewhere with this plot. Even though I'm not into it, we are getting somewhere with it, which I like. So Jax goes to his guys, tells him he'll fill him in later, and he says it will be fine. Tig says Rourke wants to meet, and he says to tell them they're on the way. And Chips pulls him aside and asks what's happened, but Jax tells him to stop worrying and says he knows what he's doing. Chips asks if he wants him to handle Rourke, but says they can all go and bring Tig and Happy, and Chips says he can take the van, but Jax says he's riding. So then we get a scene with Milo dropping Gemma off the old folks' home, and we don't know why she's there. But we do find out that Tara she's going to check on this guy. We don't know who it is. We find out a little bit later. But basically, we can see that she's his only living relative. We don't know who it is. And she talks about Tara and how Tara died a few months ago. And it really makes us remember that this whole show is taking place in 10 days. This whole season is taking place in only 10 days. And I understand that's why it's been slow moving, but it does not need to be long. I've said this before. Longer is not better. It's not. Longer's not better. What's better is the acting. That's what's better, is when you actually have a story. Then we get a pointless scene with Juice. I thought it was really dumb what happened here. I didn't really care about this at all. I'm not even going to talk about it because I don't care. So, Jax says they need to keep Connor's guy alive, I don't want to talk about it. Jax gets a call from Wendy, and she says his grandfather's nursing home called to say Gemma's visiting her dad, and he says he didn't know that. She says Gemma isn't answering her cell. She doesn't know when she'll be back. She asks if she's still cool, if it's still cool if she goes with Nero, or if he needs help at TM. He says Chucky can handle it and tells her to go, and basically he says it, basically that's when he tells, Wayne the truth and everything. So Tyler meets with Jax. I really don't want to talk too much about this. But let's talk about the scene where Gemma visited her father, because this was one of the best scenes I think we've had with Gemma all season long. Because Katie Seagal in this performance was very, very well done. I loved seeing the way this was done. It really made us care more about Gemma. It made us really give a more human side to Gemma, and I definitely really liked the way it humanized her. So, we find out right away that her grandfather has no idea who she is. He has dementia or Alzheimer's or something. She tells him it's Gemma, your daughter. He asks if she's with the church. She says no. And asks if he remembers his family. He says he doesn't see Rose anymore. He asks again if she's with the church. She sits and tells him she wants to tell him something. She says she's sorry for all the trouble she caused him. She says she knows she hurt, she knows that she hurt him and her mom a lot and disappointed them. And Gemma says she embarrassed him. Nate says he's not her and says they send the doctor. Gemma says she's caused so much pain in her life and says she never wanted that. She says and I love this scene. It really shows how remorseful Gemma is. She says after a while it was just what she did and who she was. She said that she loved her family, her boys, but knows now that that wasn't enough. And Nate says that he had a boy who died and says he did. She says he was a good father and husband. She tells him that she loves him. And Nate asks why she's so sad. And she says she's not. She's just nostalgic. And he tells her God forgives everyone. And Nate tells her he doesn't remember her name, and she says it's Gemma. And he says Gemma was a sweet girl. He says she played in the garden for hours and was the one who loved the flowers. His mind wanders off again. She tells him bye and goes. And I thought that was a very good scene. It really humanized her character, and I definitely really enjoyed that. So I really thought that was a great scene, basically. Now, let's talk about the scene with Juice, because this is very important. Now, I really wasn't into this plot, but this was very, very well done. Because Juice comes in the cafeteria and says the Chinese stare at him. Juice tells Tully he needs to talk to him alone. The other ABs leave the table, and Juice sits across from him. Tully asks what happened, and he says it was an Asian tune-up. Juice says he's only lied because he needs to kill Tully. He says that makes sense, but says he's lost the element of surprise. Juice says he knows Jax tasked him to kill Juice, and if the Chinese do it, it could impact his relationship with the MC. He slides something across the table to Tully in a napkin. It's a shiv. He tells him to let him finish his pie. He takes a bite of the pie. And Wayne is driving top speed to Oregon. Jax also drives north on his bike. Gemma gets out of the cab at a house. She goes to the door of her dad's place. Juice finishes his pie. He sets down his work and nods at Tully. Tully's guys stand and go start a fight. While the ruckus draws attention, Juice backs up towards Tully. He whispers to Juice, "You went out good." He just says to him, "You went out good, sweetheart." Stabs him in the neck a bunch of times. He collapses, rapidly bleeds on the floor of the cafeteria as Tully walks away calmly. Now, let's talk about that. Juice is dead. I'm happy that Juice is dead because I didn't care about his plot. I really didn't. I didn't care about the prison stuff. And that was a very well done scene. A very good way to end Juice's death. However, we all saw it coming, okay? I'm not going to say we didn't see it coming because we all saw it coming. We all knew that Juice was going to die. And, that's a complaint of mine. The show thinks they do very predictable, the show thinks they do very unpredictable deaths, but we all saw it coming. We really did. So, let's talk about what happens next, because the next part of the episode, this is when the episode got really, really amazing. I thought this is when it got really, really good, and honestly, guys, this really felt like it should have been the entire episode. If this episode was shorter, then this should have been the episode. Because Gemma's in the house looking through photos and mementos. The door opens and in comes Wayne. She doesn't even look up from what she's doing. And Wayne says he didn't see the car and wasn't sure if she was there or not. She says she's here. He sits down and asks what she's doing. She tells him he's smart enough to know the answer to that. He says he needs her to come with him back to Samoa. And she says she can't do it. He says she knows about Tara. And keep in mind, guys, the Sons of Anarchy Twitter said this episode was going to be very heartbreaking. And I thought, well, it's only Juice's death. It can't be, there has to be more to it. And plus, there was like 40 minutes left, so I'm like, there has to be more to this. So, he tells her that Jax is on the way, and he doesn't know what happens if he comes. And Gemma says she does. He asks her not to make him call the local cops. He says we can do this quietly, and she says that's not her style, but tells him to do what he needs to do. He starts to make the call, and then Jax comes in. And it's a very intense scene. You don't know what's going to happen here, and I love the way this is done, because he tells Jax he's arresting her and taking her back to Charming. Jax says he needs to be alone with his mother, and Wayne says he can't do that. Wayne says he already called into the local PD, but Gemma speaks up and says that he didn't. And Wayne goes back over to stand by Gemma, and Jax tells him he should go, and then pulls a gun on him, and Wayne asks what's now. Jax says this is between him and his mom, and literally they both have guns near each other. This scene was amazing. However, guys, this scene, I personally felt, should have been in next week's episode, because this scene is awesome. You know, Wayne has his gun out, Jax has his gun out, it's really awesome to watch. Jax lowers his first, then tells Wayne to go home, and Wayne says he can't do it and says this is all he's got, and Gemma looks at him and doesn't say a word. Jax puts a bullet into Wayne's heart, and Wayne dies. And that was too abrupt, in my opinion, guys. I really felt that was too abrupt. It came out of nowhere. It really did. It completely came out of nowhere. I understand that they really wanted to have a big death, but this episode has a huge death. So, why kill off Wayne? I don't get it. Because something bigger happens after this episode, after this scene that I definitely want to talk about. And my thing is, like, why do you even have this in here? Because it was pointless. It really didn't contributed pretty much nothing. It really didn't. Gemma says nothing at this point. And, that was definitely a very crazy scene. But I really felt like it should have been the finale. I really did. So, I definitely thought that should have been the finale. I just felt like it should have. I don't know. I feel like it should have been the finale. So, Jax sits down on the sofa holding his gun. Gemma shows him a photo of his granddad in World War II and says he looks like him. And the rest of the episode, well, for most of the episode, is a conversation between Jax and Gemma, which I love. And I love the way this scene was done. Katie Seagal and Charlie Hunnam did a great job here, because this is just very, very, very good character development. There's not a lot of violence going on here. It's a very quiet scene. I definitely really enjoyed that. And she says Nero has no idea, and Jax says he knows. She says Nero's a good man, and he should stay close to him. The record Gemma was playing ends, and he asks if she still has a copy of JT's manuscript. She tells him it's in the storage locker in his brother's birth certificate. She tells him she loved Tara, but he says don't talk about it. He doesn't want to hear it. She says it's not an excuse, and she's not defending herself. And I love that she tells him right out, I'm not defending myself. And you know what, guys? A lot of people complained that it's stupid that Gemma was so remorseful, but think about it. Gemma loves Jax. That's what she cares about the most in her life, is Jax. Okay, Gemma does not have a hatred for Jax. The only reason she killed Tara was a huge misunderstanding, because she thought that that Tara was the one that was responsible for the death of Clay. That's why she killed Tara. So we know that. You know, that's why she killed Tara. So she loves Jax. She's never gonna hurt him, and that's why she's so remorseful about it. So she tells him she loves him from the deepest pure of his heart, and she tells him he has to. And this next scene was amazing, because they go out to a backyard and walks among the overgrown bushes and flowers. Jax follows her. She stops with her back to him, and he's in tears. He holds up his gun and takes aim and lowers it. And I personally thought he wasn't going to go through with it. I really didn't. And she's telling him, look, you have to do this. It's time. And I thought this scene was just so well done, the way they did this. You know, she says it's who they are. Calls him sweetheart. He raised the gun again. She said it's okay. She calls him her baby boy, and she just says it's time. She never turns back to look at him, because she knows that she's betrayed him. She knows that he's mad. She knows that this whole season, all he's been doing is avenging Tara's death. And she knows that it needs to come to an end. It's come to an end. It needs to end. And Jax looks around at the garden. And honestly, guys, in my opinion, this was the most well-handled scene in the entire season so far. The way the scene was handled was perfect. I really love the way this was handled. It's perfect, in my opinion. He raised the gun again. She said it's okay. And she lowers her head, closes her eyes, and he kills her. And I didn't think he was going to do it, but he does. I wasn't surprised, because I knew that he was going to do that, but I was surprised because we're on episode 12, and he just killed the second main character of the show. So, what happens now in the finale? It's a problem for me. I understand killing Gemma, but killing Wayne doesn't make any sense. So Jax drives back to Charming. We get probably the best montage of the entire show so far. I mean, not the entire show, but the entire season. I mean, I haven't seen the entire show, so I don't know what the best montage is. But let's talk about the montage. I loved the song Make It Rain. Make It Rain is an original song by Ed Sheeran. And that's one of the things I loved, is that this was an original song. Most of the montages this season have been of covers of songs that have not been very good. This was the best one. It was Ed Sheeran, who is one of the best singers working today. It was a 6-minute montage. It had no dialogue whatsoever. It was completely silent. And I love that, because the way they portrayed it was so well done. Because it's basically how everyone is moving on with their lives after Jax has killed Gemma. Jax is driving back to Charming that night. The MC goes out, guns down all the Chinese they can find on the streets, because Jax told them to do that. Of course, that's what Mr. Mayhem means. Wendy peeks in on Abel, then goes to check on Thomas. Juice's body is checked by the coroner and shrouded. The MC goes into a Chinese card game and shoots all the thugs there. Nero comes back to Gemma's place and looks around. He goes into her bedroom, looks at a photo of her on the nightstand, sits down on the bed and sobs. You can tell that he can tell that Jax killed Gemma. You can tell that. So Jax comes home, takes off his vest, he hangs it up neatly, sits down in the living room. Also, Jax is limping now, and I don't know what that's about. He takes off his sneakers, and I thought this was very well handled. Those sneakers that we always see, you know, we always see a close-up of those white sneakers. There's now blood on them because he killed Gemma. And he looks up as Wendy comes in. She sits down by him, and I honestly thought that Jax was suicidal, because she says, "Are you okay?" He says, "No." And I thought that Jax was gonna, like, try to kill himself, because it really seemed like he was that suicidal. But he's not suicidal. She reaches for him, pulls her to him, kisses her, grabs her, kisses her hard, and I didn't think this was gonna happen. Basically now, Jax and Wendy are back together. They have sex, and they're back together now. And that was very surprising. I didn't think that was gonna happen. And that was extremely surprising what happened there, definitely. So, Gemma lies in the garden, we see the blood on her head, and that's the end of the episode. So, I thought that was very well handled, but let's talk about some things I do have a problem with. First of all, guys, I pretty much think the finale is going to suck now. I personally really do. We're going to talk about why. I understand killing Gemma had to happen. It was the ultimate thing that needed to happen. But why do it this episode and not next week's? This episode, honestly, should have been Jax and Gemma in this room, and them having a conversation and Jax not knowing what to do. And maybe, like, he thinks about killing Gemma, doesn't go through with it. You know, maybe that happens. I honestly thought that's what the episode should have been. Juice stuff could have been cut out. That could have happened next week. I don't see the point of killing, you know, like, that could have happened next week. I could have seen that happening. Wayne should have happened next week. Gemma dying, okay. But what happens now? Because the central plot of the season is over. You know, Jax trying to find Tara's killer is over. Jax trying to figure out what to do with Gemma is over. Now all we have is Jax moving on with his life and being with Wendy. Now, there are some questions I do have, definitely. First of all, some people have said that they don't know if if they were using protection or not. So they're thinking that Wendy might get pregnant again. If that happens, that's going to be a very cliche twist, and I don't think they're going to do that, but this show can sometimes be very predictable, so I could see them doing that, definitely. Some people are thinking, I definitely think that Jax is suicidal now. I definitely think that he's gonna, you know, this is really gonna get to him. We knew he was gonna kill Gemma, we knew he was gonna do it, but him, you know, now that he's killed Gemma, I think this is gonna break him. I really feel this is going to. I don't know what's gonna happen to him, but we'll have to see what happens there. What's going to happen? Do you think he's done with the Motorcycle Club? I really feel he's done with the MC. I know that the next episode is all about him trying to make up for everything that his father did and try to, like, wrap it up and sort of, like, tie things up, basically. And I think it's an interesting plot, but it looks like nothing really happens next week. And I know that they're teasing things, but next week's episode is very, very long. And I don't really know if this is going to be a good finale or not. And I know I said this with the True Blood finale, and ended up being very, very good. A lot of people didn't like it, but I personally really loved it. But for me, guys, this has been the worst like, the worst final season I've seen of a TV show so far this year, because the show has been very filler. And yes, these last 3 episodes, they have tried to do something. They have tried to do a lot of things. But this episode was very draggy. There were a lot of scenes that could have been cut out. A lot of stuff in the first, like, hour could have been cut out perfectly. This episode did not need to be 2 hours long. It could have just been an hour and 20 minutes. I would have been fine with that. It did not need to be an hour and 50 minutes. It was way too long for the show. The show is better when it does an hour and 20 minutes. Definitely, it should not have. I didn't really care about the Bears tea stuff. I didn't care about the Juice stuff. I didn't really care about that stuff. But let me know what you guys saw this episode. Let me talk about what I think is going to happen in the finale. In the finale, I don't know what's going to happen. It's probably going to be very dialogue-driven. It's probably going to be very boring. I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to probably be just... I feel it's going to be boring. But the last shot, I really hope, is us seeing what's going to happen to Abel, because they've hinted it so much that he's going to become part of the Sons that I want to see that happen, definitely. I don't want to see some stupid twist where Jax makes that not be a thing, because if they did that, I think that'd be really dumb. But that's been my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for the second part of the Flash Arrow crossover this time, Arrow's episode, which I'm so pumped for. And what do you guys think of the finale? Do you think the finale is going to be good? I don't think it's going to be, but I'll see you guys in my next video. Was this episode draggy? Did you like the way Gemma, Wayne, and Juice's deaths were handled? Did too many people die in this episode? I thought way too many people died, honestly. Borak Empire handled that so much better. But Sons of Anarchy just did the stupidest thing. They killed off, like, 3 very essential characters, and now we have nothing to do. There's no story. So, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll see you guys in my next video. Okay, bye.